All
Never use Zoom.
right. What's up, everyone? Happy Monday. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your Monday evening to join us here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Laura. I am the founder of Back of the Pack, which is essentially a community geared towards beginner and back of the pack trail runners. We help people feel confident and capable and get started off on the right foot in their trail running journey. We do coaching, we host retreats. This year we're actually hosting our first ever trail half marathon, putting on my race director hat this year. That's in Nashville, Tennessee. We have about 10 spots left if anyone wants to join that. But anyways, it's part of our mission to help people feel confident making their way onto the trails. I wanted to bring on Jess here. Jess and I connected via the gram a couple years ago, and it's been super fun to kind of get to know her and watch her adventures and chat about like how we can use strength training to help us feel stronger in our outdoor endeavors. Like Jess, I trail run, but I also ski and mountain bike and do all these other things. And certainly notice that the seasons that I strength train are the seasons I feel a lot better doing those things. So without further ado, Jess, I will just let you take it away and introduce yourself and get going here.
Awesome. Great introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, hopefully, so that, where is it? Um, Hold on.
We
Technical
like, literally just changed the
difficulties.
layout of everything.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen and then I'll introduce myself. This should work. The problem is that I have like 18 tabs open, so I
Mm-hmm.
can't find the right one. So,
I definitely live that life myself.
um, I don't know. Sorry, one second.
Okay. While
No.
Jess is figuring that out, if you want to drop in the comments like where you're from and maybe if you are training for a race right now, what distance or what race that is, it'd be really fun to get to know. There's actually a lot of names on this that I don't recognize, which is super exciting. We're reaching more people.
Okay, I think this is gonna work now. Sorry.
Okay.
It's not oh there. Okay. Got it. All right. Now we can see it. Awesome. Okay. I'm not going to put it in present mode just because I don't think we need that. But basically, I'm Jess. I am the owner and coach of Flow Zone Performance Coaching, which is a strength and conditioning uh, company for mountain sports athletes. So I work specifically with any type of mountain sports athletes, from skiing to mountain biking to trail running, obviously. Just people that like to get out and do hard things in the mountains, but don't necessarily have like one activity that is their sole focus. Like maybe you have a summer sport and a winter sport, and you switch between those, and you're trying to train to not only increase your performance, but also decrease your injury risk and just be able to have more fun and enjoy your sports more. So first off, I kind of just want to ask who has experienced any discomfort while running or trail running. This can include anything like pain, instabilities, or something that's not really related to endurance. Yeah, you could just raise your hand, or you can turn your mic off and say it out loud. No one? I saw a hand raise.
Yeah. Um, Teresa, did you want to say something or are you just saying that yes, you have experienced pain? I think these might be what those raised hands are.
Okay. Ooh. All
Um,
right. Well, I'm sure we all have. I'm I'm Jess. I have a bachelor's of science in exercise physiology, and then I'm also a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and I have a level one nutrition coaching certification. I am a competitive freeride skier in the winter, but I also like to weightlift, trail run, mountain bike, gravel bike. Um, I have dogs, so I like to do things with them most of the time. I eat a lot of bagels. I used to work at a bagel shop. So I'm very picky about my bagels. But if you're going to do a lot of activities, you got to fuel them, and bagels are a great way to do that. So, um, first of all, why strength train? So we always say practice makes perfect. Why are we just practicing um, running? Running is repetitive, and lifting can help prevent overtraining and overuse injuries. Running is also super high impact, and so strength training can help us offset that impact and make all of the little muscles around our knees and ankles more strong and stable so that that impact has less wear and tear over time. Um, that kind of leads right into injury prevention. So, strength training, obviously, it affects your muscles, but it also affects your tendons and your joint strength, which is very important for running. And it also affects your proprioception, which is like where your body is at in the universe. So, this really comes into play with trail running because the trail is not always smooth. There's rocks, there's stumps, there's roots, branches, hills, side hills. And so, training, like strength training and increasing your proprioception and motor control can help prevent injuries caused by a fall on the trail. Strength training can also help increase your running efficiency. So by being stronger, you may be able to run longer or harder while using less energy. And obviously, running running more, you get better at this too, but combining it with strength training kind of is like double forces. It also helps with long-term enjoyment. We're not just doing the same thing all the time. Um, you kind of get to see the progress in multiple areas, and you get to see how improving your endurance from running impacts your ability to train harder in the gym and vice versa, which is really fun, especially when you're like a few years deep into training. Um, makes it so it's a little less repetitive. So I'm going to start off with some definitions. Whoops. Um, just about strength training and in general. So obviously, strength training is a style of training that involves using muscles against a force that can be gravity, extra weights, bands, any kind of additional force to improve your muscular strength and endurance. Um, I'm pretty sure if you have Instagram and you don't live under a rock, you've heard of the term hybrid training. This is not a new method of training, but I do like to define it because it can be a little bit confusing, especially with Instagram. But it's basically just any training plan that involves endurance training and strength training. So that can look like running and lifting, or that can look like CrossFit and skiing, or something, or CrossFit and biking, or something like long-term endurance and strength training. Doesn't matter what they are. Um, and then progressive overload. This is slowly but surely increasing some aspect of your training. And this is something that is necessary for any kind of training program if you're looking to progress. Obviously, we cannot always progress in every aspect of our training program, but good training programs always have one aspect that's focused on progressive overload throughout each training block. Sometimes the progressive overload is more on the endurance side, so you might be more focused on the running and progressively overloading your running and just maintaining your strength. Other seasons, you might be trying to maintain your aerobic base while increasing your strength. So they just fluctuate. Cross training, um, you might all be familiar with this as well. It's just including different types of training outside of the main focus. So I'm assuming a lot of people on this call, their main focus is probably trail running or just regular running. So this can look like adding in swimming or biking or weightlifting or skiing, just any other kind mode of training. And then a deload. I like to include this because not everybody knows what a deload is. This is not taking time off from the gym necessarily, but going to the gym with a set intention or going on a run with a set intention of having a lower intensity or a lower volume to help support recovery while still being active. So this can look different depending on how they're programmed, but they can be a couple days, they can be a week. All right. Couple more definitions with some memes. Volume versus intensity. So these are two training variables that are involved with both running programming and lifting programming. Volume is like a total amount of work done in a session. So when you're thinking about weightlifting, the example here is bench pressing. He's doing tons of reps. He might not be doing those reps at a super high rate, but he's doing a lot of them. So he's accumulating a lot of volume. This can also be compared to like running a trail marathon or something like that. That's a lot longer, it's a lot of volume, but you're probably going at a slower pace. And then high intensity is the amount of effort exerted in a single session. So the example here is Olympic weightlifting. He's lifting a lot of weight one time. It's very high intensity, like max effort. So comparing this to running, it would look like sprints, sprint intervals or hill sprints, something like that, where you're training close to or at your max intensity, but not for very long. All right. So now we know kind of the why and the what. But how do we do this? How do we make time when it feels like ain't nobody got time for that? So I like memes if you can't tell. I'm Gen Z. So some things to consider when you're adding this into your life and your running program and all of the things that are going on. The first thing to consider is your schedule. And Laura talks a lot about this on Fact of the Pack. Sorry, my dog's screaming at the door. She wants to come out here.
Oh.
Um, she's scared of the gym, which is right below our apartment. And it makes loud noises. But your schedule is very important to consider when you're adding in strength training. A lot of times, people who are new to weightlifting and on this call might be new to trail running as well. Two-a-days are not really, two-a-days being like running and strength training in the same day. It's not really feasible for a lot of people. And so you really have to look at your schedule and get really realistic with like how many days a week am I running? How many days a week am I lifting? And am I still having rest days? Because if adding lifting into your running schedule is going to make it so that you don't have a rest day, maybe it's not the right time or you need to figure out your schedule. Then next, you have to figure out your priorities and goals. So, like I said, with progressive overload, you're always going to have different seasons. Sometimes you're going to be wanting to focus on gaining strength, and sometimes you're going to want to focus on building endurance. And so, your training program and like how many days a week you're running versus how many days a week you're lifting, or vice versa, is going to look different depending on what your current goals are. Another thing to consider, training age and experience. If you've been running for a few years, adding in strength training probably won't be a crazy transition for you, especially if you're adding in anywhere from 1 to 3 days a week. And you might be able to handle 1 or 2 days a week, depending. If you're new to trail running and new to lifting, it's best to keep them both on the lower level until your training age gets a little bit higher. And then it'll be more enjoyable too. Next, kind of looking at your schedule still, your free time. What's realistic for you? Setting good expectations. You don't want to commit to this crazy training schedule and have so much fun the first week. And then Sunday before the next week starts, you're like, wow, I have to do it all over again. That's never fun. And then the last thing is nutrition. So if you're going to be adding in strength training to your running training, it's really important that you know how to fuel or you have some sort of coach or support system to kind of help you with that. There's a lot of misinformation online and it can be really confusing. So it's really important to fuel your recovery from both running and lifting. It's going to make the whole thing more enjoyable.
Yeah.
All right. So next, this is a little screen grab from one of Laura's like intro to trail running running plans. So this is like a week of run plans for somebody who's newer to running. So these are all shorter runs. I don't know if everybody on here is familiar with RPE, but RPE is basically a measure of intensity. It's a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being sitting down and 10 being like all out sprints, high intensity, like we talked about before. So these RPEs range from 4 to 6. That's pretty mellow, but still working your body. And a lot of people might call this zone 2. So that's what you might also see online. Um, so the goal with this training schedule is to have 3 days of running, 2 days of full body strength, and two-ish rest days. This might look different depending on you and your schedule. Um, so the requirements I set, and this is kind of like to make a mock training schedule, are 1 to 2 days of rest between strength training and the long run. So in this case, the long run is this one, the 40-minute one. Um, so taking at least 1 to 2 days of rest before that, and then intentionally planning 2 a days when needed. And that's like something that we want to try to avoid, but we can't always avoid it. So they have to be intentional. So with those requirements, I put together two options of like strength training weekly outlines that include running and strength training and rest. And as you can see, we'll go over these, but you can see that they don't meet all the requirements because it's hard. So you have to pick the one that best fits your schedule. So this first option has 2 days of running in a row and then a day of lifting. And then that 2 days of rest, that's ideal to have before a long run. And then the last day of the week, Sunday, is like cross training. So maybe your friends are going on a hike or you're going paddle boarding or something of the sort. Or maybe you want to go do something else that's active. You can count that as cross training. So this is one option. The second option for getting in these runs and 2 days of lifting is to do one day of running, followed by one day of lifting, followed by one day of running, followed by one day of lifting. So 4 days in a row, and then a rest day, and then your long run, and then either another rest day or cross training. So as you can see, neither of these options are what we would consider perfect, like adding in all the variables for including both running and training in a plan, but they do optimize the training in different ways. And you just kind of have to figure out what works for your body and what works for your schedule. And if you follow Laura, you probably know that some people's schedules don't look the same very often. So week to week, your schedule might always look different, and
Yeah,
that's okay.
I was gonna I was gonna add on here. I don't think I included this in my introduction for the people that don't know me. My real full-time job is a emergency department nurse, and I work like 22 to 24-hour shifts. And they're different days every week. So my schedule changes week to week. If you can see me on, I don't know, whatever view you have, I will create little calendars for myself and I will list out like the days of the week that I'm working and I'll highlight those so those kind of stand out. And then I build my schedule around that. And there are never any 2 weeks that look the same. It's very different. And I think that if you are someone who has a variable job like that, or maybe you have kids or other life commitments, I think just a really solid reminder and encouragement that your schedule isn't going to look like everyone else's. And when you see that template plan online, it's okay to change days around and kind of do what Jess has done here and say like, these are my goals, first of all, and these are the parameters that I want to fit those goals within. And here's some ways that it can work, whether it looks perfect or not. And just know again that like day to day, week to week, things might look differently.
Exactly. And there's also, these are just two options, but there's so many ways to organize this. Like your body might not like having 2 days of rest in a row. Like some people really benefit from 2 days of rest in a row, and some people like to have 2 days that are not back to back. So it just depends where you are at and what works for you. And you might have to experiment if you're new to these things. Um, Moving on. So now we've talked about why you should strength train when running and kind of how to fit it into your schedule. But what does strength training actually look like for trail running? So again, I have a few things to consider before we get into it. First of all, core strength is huge. I'm sure you know this, but training your core and not just in the typical like plank hold sit up fashion allows your abdominal muscles to work together with your pelvis and your hips and your lower back, which increases stability. And this is so, so, so important, especially for trail running. Like we talked about earlier, trails are not the same as a road, and they're very inconsistent. So training your core strength and having that connection between your core and your pelvis and your hips is Very important for stability. And then functional strength. So functional strength is a bit of a confusing term. I like to think of it as muscle strength as it applies to real life movements. So this could be the muscles in your knee being strong enough in a variety of different positions that when you unexpectedly land on a rock or you unexpectedly um, strike your foot on a route that crosses the trail, you have the strength in your knee or your ankle or your leg to kind of come back from that without falling or tweaking anything. And then muscle endurance. So this is the muscle's ability to keep exerting force without fatiguing. You can increase muscle endurance by both running and strength training. Muscle strength. This is like the max amount of force a muscle can exert in one effort. So usually a 1 rep max, which is not something you really need to know as a trail runner. And then recovery. This is when the growth happens. So we need recovery, not just between workouts and runs, but also between sets in one workout. So resting between your sets is very important. And then also recovery in general, influenced by rest, nutrition, and light activities like a deload that we talked about before. And then before I show the full example of a program, I wanted to talk about the hip flexor just because I think there's a lot of confusion with this. I've had confusion with this. Um, so what the heck is your hip flexor? It's actually not one muscle. It's a big group of muscles, a muscle group, and they all work together in running and a lot of other movements, but they're common, they're used a lot in running. So this, because it's a muscle group, you have to do different kinds of movements to target the different muscles in your hip flexor and increase strength throughout the full range of each muscle without neglecting another muscle. And a lot of times when you have one of your hip flexor muscles is weaker compared to the other ones, this can cause some compromising, which can lead to hip pain, knee pain, just different pains that runners usually experience. It doesn't all come back to the hip flexor. The hip flexor is not some, it's very popular. It's a popular term. People like to blame kind of all pains on it with running. And a lot of them can be caused from the hip flexor, but I just wanted to explain that it is not just one muscle. It's a big group of muscles, and you have to move in lots of different ways to strengthen all of them. So that being said, here is 2 full body strength workouts. You can take a picture of this, you can screenshot it. Maybe I can send out this PowerPoint, honestly. But these are pretty 2 pretty solid full body strength days that you can include with your trail running. So we'll go through it real quick. Day 1, both days start with a warm up, and in the warm up, I like to include anywhere from 3 to 5, 10 minutes of light cardio, ideally something that's not running. Like you can do this on the spin bike, on the rower, on a ski erg machine, something that's just going to give you a different stimulus than running, and get your heart rate up. And then transition into mobility and movement prep. So this is kind of a gray area, and it really depends on what your focus is that day, but also where your mobility, like where it lacks and what you need to target. So this can look different for everybody, but it can also be very specific to the workout. So that's why I didn't really provide a specific warm up. So the first movement on day 1 will be deadlifts, and anywhere from 3 to 4 sets of 6 to 8 reps, and using RPE for intensity at a 7 to 8.5. So you can think of RPE as a scale of 1 to 10, 7 to 8.5 out of 10. And if you're easily getting 8 reps on all the sets and you don't feel like, man, this isn't that hard, you're probably not going heavy enough. So kind of you'll just have to learn what RPE is and like its process. And then, so that's the main lift. And then you would go into some accessory work. Accessory work can usually be done at a higher RPE than the main lift just because it's isolating usually either one muscle or a smaller area of muscles. So deadlift is like a full body movement, whereas the first accessory movement that we have, which is a one-legged or a one leg on the wall, single leg RDL really targets the hamstring, the abductor, and the glute of the one leg that you're standing on. So it's just specifically targeting a few muscles. Um, and that's a unilateral movement, which is really good for running. And then you'll go into a single arm dumbbell bench press, which the single arm helps promotes core stability, and then inverted rows. That one you might have to look up for a good visualization, but some upper back strength, which can be really important for running, keeping your shoulders back, not letting your shoulders crunch forward, which a lot of people tend to do when they're running. And then finishing off with some core. And like I said, the core here is going to be more active, stability focused, trying to connect your core muscles throughout your lower back and into your pelvis to create that kinetic chain strength. And then day two, a little bit different. The core, the like compound lift is going to be front squats. You could potentially elevate your heels, which would target your quads more to kind of offset the deadlifts from the first day. And same thing with the RPE and the sets and reps there. And then 3 rounds of accessory work. And the accessory work is just focusing on a unilateral lower body movement. So this one's lateral box step up with an eccentric focus. So the eccentric part is the lowering from the box. This is really important for running because it helps strengthen your tendons and all the little muscles around your knee, keeping them under load for longer than if you were to just step off the box really fast and not really control yourself on the way down. And then finishing off the accessory work with 2 upper body movements. One is pushing, the strict press, and one is pulling, an eccentric focused pull up, and then into core again. So something to note with both of these workouts, both of them are full body workouts. They both have a full body movement. So the front squat or the deadlift, there's lots of other options you can include here. And then they all have some sort of squatting, some sort of hinging at the hip. So that's like a deadlift, or a step up is kind of like a hinge. And then some sort of pushing and some sort of pulling. So that is what makes a full body workout, is including all 4 of those aspects. And both of these workouts do just that. So they will be very good for targeting all the muscles for strength training without overly fatiguing you and having what we call junk volume, which is just volume that doesn't really do anything, but it makes you feel like you did more. Maybe you feel a little bit more accomplished, but then the next day you're really tired, which is not what we want. Other movements you could include any kind of step up variation. So I had lateral step ups in the example, but you can do front step ups. You could do front rack step ups. So holding the weights on your shoulders. This really involves your core a lot more. You can do step downs. Lots of different unilateral movements, and then any lunge variation. So forward, reverse, lateral, lateral with a heel raise. You could do curtsy lunges. There's so many different lunge variations. And as a runner, it's really important to try to incorporate all of them. As like I said, the hip flexor has lots of different muscles in it, and all these different versions of lunges and step ups target different areas in different ways. And so it's just good to get that variety in. And then Copenhagen planks, which if you guys aren't familiar with that, it's like a side plank, but your upper leg is on something elevated. So you're kind of like holding your body suspended by your leg, and it really gets your adductor, which is the inside of your thigh. Wall sits with or without a heel raise can be great for running. Single leg glute bridge, again, with an eccentric focus. You can pretty much add an eccentric focus. Again, that's the slow lowering of any movement. You can add that to anything and it's going to benefit you. Time under tension is great. And then lastly, adding some jumping movements with explosive focus. So rather than trying to get a ton of repetitions here, because you're already getting a lot of impact from running and you're getting a lot of repetitions from running, trying to add something that focuses on jumping and explosiveness and power without adding too much all at once. So something like 6 super high box jumps where you're focusing on the height instead of the reps, or something like broad jumps, which are jumping for distance and you're trying to jump as far as you can rather than as much as you can. Single leg jumps, pogo hops, lots of different like ball slams, stuff that focuses on power in a different way, and impact in a different way than running does will complement your running very well. Um, yeah, that was quick.
Um,
Questions.
yeah, while people think of questions, a couple of things that I wrote down. What I really like about the examples here and having the 2 full body days, is it's minimum effective dose. So, um, I personally am someone who does not really enjoy going to the gym. I just want to go outside and go running and ride my mountain bike and go skiing in the winter and take naps. I don't enjoy the gym. I've seen programs that are like 4 days a week and like 75 minutes at a time. And it's like I'm just not going to do that. But two full body days is amazing for trail runners. It's that kind of minimum effective dose that you need to feel strong and prevent injury. This workout, you could probably be in and out of the gym in under an hour, and get right back to your life and your adventures. And yeah, Lindsay here. So Lindsay's I think a professional trail runner and coach. And she says excessively lengthy programs just don't add metabolic stress that runners don't need more of most of the time. So I like to think of those bright orange 5 gallon buckets from Home Depot. And every single day we put stress into those buckets. We put our work stress, our relationship stress, financial stress, stress from workout, stress from running and stress from lifting. All of that stress goes into a bucket, and our body doesn't differentiate between workout stress and life stress and all of that. And so eventually our stress bucket overloads. So we have to manage that stress. And some stress is good and beneficial, but too much stress of any kind, it's going to lead to injury and um, being overworked and burnt out and all of that. So I love this example of this just being like a very straightforward, simple, um, effective workout program to make runners feeling strong and prepared for all of that single leg work that we do on trails, hopping up and over rocks and roots and climbing steep climbs. So Sarah, thank you for validating my not wanting to go to the gym.
And something on the minimum effective training dose, I use that um like concept in all of my training programs. Like I work pretty much exclusively with people who would much rather spend time outside than in the mountains. I mean, than in the gym. I do like to be in the gym, but I also like to be in the mountains, and I totally respect that people want to get their workout in the mountains when they can. So I definitely plan all my programs around the minimum effective dose just because why do extra? You don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, and you said this too, that kind of like junk volume. I think that oftentimes there can be two types of people, and one is me, where it's like I don't want to be here, but I will do it. And then the other person is like, I need to do the most, and if I'm not walking out sore and dead after every workout, it wasn't good enough, and if I don't do 5,000 reps, it wasn't good enough. And
Which
so
is a whole nother problem.
yeah.
That's a whole, I can't even talk about that right
Exactly,
now.
yeah. And so yeah, just again a reminder that like we actually don't have to do the most. You just have to do, something like
You
this for
honestly
yourself.
have to do the least, the
Yeah,
best that you can.
exactly. Do the least the best you can. Love that. So does anyone have questions for Jess about Lindsay says, what is the best way to put athletes in touch with you if we want them to explore working with you?
Oh my gosh, Lindsay, that's such a good question. So I think after this call, we'll share. Laura, are you planning on sending something out?
Yeah, I will send this out. If y'all are not already on the official back of the pack email list, which I will drop the link to join there.
And you
I'll
should join because all those emails are great.
thanks. I send like maybe one a week. If you join, you'll get a couple more, but they're all super helpful. One is like a long run nutrition guide, one's a gear guide. And then otherwise I send out like maybe one every 1 to 2 weeks. And they're always like, here's a really cool YouTube video I saw. Here's a great inspirational podcast. But I will be sending out the replay of this as well as the PDF of the presentation. So.
And then I also went ahead, this only helps the people that are in here right now, but I just put my website and my Instagram username in the comments. So you can find all of my information on there. But Flow Zone Performance Coaching, Jessing around on Instagram, not related. But yeah, I would love to work with people, love to work with trail runners, mountain sports athletes, people who like to play outside.
And Jess, you have a couple different options for people, right? You do one-on-one,
Yeah.
and you also have
Yeah, I have one-on-one coaching, just a programming option for some people who are more experienced. And then I have some subscription programs and may have a new one coming out soon. So yeah, a couple different ways to work with me, but definitely love to answer any questions. So if you guys have questions that you think of after this, you can message me on Instagram, and I love to talk about training and life. So
Awesome. Cool.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jess. Does anyone have any
Oh, this is my legitimate. I
oh,
should
there
have
you
gone to the last
go.
slide. Forgot I put that there.
That looks exactly like the gym that I just joined. I'm like, why
Oh,
didn't
really?
yeah, it's very cool. It's very
That's
fun.
a CrossFit gym.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
go there anymore.
um,
Anyways, yeah, awesome.
all right. Yeah. Does anyone, we'll maybe keep this on for a couple more minutes if people want to unmute or
Yeah,
in the chat. It was really fun to read. I'll just kind of go through that while people are noodling around if they have questions. We got people from all over the country. We got a couple of people that are going to be running the back of the pack half. We got first 50K, a base builder, marathon this fall. Danny, she's one of my run clients. She's training for her first 50K. She's doing her physical therapy during this call. Lori from Minneapolis is training for some mountain runs. We got cross training of kayaking, mountain biking, aerial silks.
that's
Or
cool.
um,
I did just see another question in here.
mhm,
Do you help accommodate athletes who might not have access to various types of equipment? So this is something I'm currently working on with subscription programs, but with any one-on-one program or custom program, it's totally uh, adjusted based off of, or I should say designed based around what you have. So kind of part of the application process to work with me one-on-one involves me learning about what you have access to. Um, and so yeah, it's can totally be built around minimal equipment.
mhm. Yeah, awesome.
Also, I'm hoping to go to Nashville.
Yes,
So
yes. Bess is going to join us in
I'm
Nashville.
gonna join.
It's going to be so fun.
So I see a lot of comments about that.
I know, I'm so excited. There's a lot of the Trail Sisters Nashville group randomly shared it, and I feel like we got a few people from that.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so it should be really fun. Kristen asks, is there an issue with strength training 2 days in a row?
No, it might be harder to adapt to right in the beginning, but again, that's just a new stimulus, a new type of training is going to make you sore. So I would just, keep in mind that maybe don't run after that. Like do your 2 days of strength training, but on the third day, don't run. Or if you do run, it's like a shakeout run. But yeah, strength training 2 days in a row is not an issue, especially once your body starts to adapt, which just takes honestly a couple weeks. Really not a long time.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'll add with that, Kristen, like a well-designed program like this one that Jess laid out here and has in Flow Zone, will have like days where it's alternating muscle groups being worked, so you're not like pounding your quads 2 days in a row or whatever. Um, and so that always helps with that stimulus. But yeah, again, like looking at kind of your overall life picture just week by week and seeing, how do things fit? And if the answer is, you know what, the only way that they fit is if I strength train 2 days in a row, then that's what you do. And working within the bounds of your life to get things done.
Yep. And it also just depends too, like I've had weeks where I front load all my strength training in the beginning of the week because I have all these like big adventurous plans on the weekend. So I still want to get it in. And honestly, over time, it all just blends together.
Mhm.
And throughout like 1 month period of training, you're probably like doing the same amount of work. So as long as you're resting still and not pushing too many days in a row without rest, you're still doing the work.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well,
Cool.
cool. Thank you so much, Jess, for
Of
coming on
course.
and
Thanks for
sharing
having me.
with us. And I will send out this replay tomorrow to that email list that I shared in the chat. So people, if you hopped on late, you can go back, and then we'll also include Jess's info there if you haven't already gone and followed her on Instagram. So you'll be able to have a second chance to find her and see her fun adventures. Um, and yeah, otherwise we're trying to do these webinars like once or twice a month. So stay tuned for the next one. And thanks so much, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm sorry for my technical difficulties, and I hope to meet some of you guys in Nashville.
Yes, so excited. All right. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye.